Hello, and welcome to the research proposal for Active Green Architecture and an industry guidebook. Over the next 10 minutes, we will outline the concepts of active green architecture, the problems that face the world today, and the 5 key typologies of active green architecture. As cities sprawl outwards, more land is being lost to the urban and suburban condition. Today, the architectural approach to sustainability is through the introduction of greenery on the walls and roofs. This is green architecture, but this is not active in its response to growing societal problems of the world. Human development has rapidly decreased the total arable lands available for agriculture. Active green architecture seeks at multiple levels to combine agriculture and the urban condition into one architectural response. To start this guidebook, we look towards the United Nations Sustainable Goals to get a general idea of the public issues for the next 30 years. From these 17 goals, we wanted an response that will look towards addressing zero hunger, life on the land, and sustainable cities. In our world today, up to a quarter of the people lack access to safe, nutritious food. With this growing problem, and food security in developed nations also becoming a problem, a solution needs to be reached. Food security is being exacerbated by humans' poor land mismanagement. This is from the actions of forest clearing for farms, and then cities' urban sprawl taking over these farmland in turn. This results in reduced arable farming lands, reduced biodiversity on the planet, and up to 60% of the world's population currently living in urban areas themselves. Active green architecture is to be a disrupting force that brings urban agriculture and food production into the heart of cities. It is formed around the idea of local supply and local demand. This idea of local production has been around since Roman times, with Emperor Nero having a complete farmland and vineyard in his palace walls. Urban agriculture takes many forms, from the most common idea being the indoor urban vertical farms. This is likened to factories, warehouse buildings full of growing shelves, all bathed in the purple UV light and air conditioning. The benefits of these indoor vertical farms is a lower footprint than traditional farming with higher yields of products. Another similar process is controlled greenhouses. These leverage some of the electrical and lighting benefits given by the sun while also using UV lights at night to trick the plants into 2 days worth of growth within a single 24-hour period. These greenhouses do take the same footprint as a standard farm but allow for up to double the annual yield on food production. Both of these systems work to reduce the amount of water, fertilizer, and pesticides used, with the downside being the limits on crops, generally space restricted to leafy greens. The implementations of these forms of urban agriculture is based on 3 factors: land cost, electricity pricing, and investor support. These high-tech urban agricultural products are not the only solution. A case study was undertaken in the cities from Poland and Belgium in which they found that all of these high-tech practices were virtually non-existent. In these cities, urban agriculture took the forms of rooftop or community gardens woven into the civic fabric. These spaces were developed by NGOs or standard communities finding small fill-in spaces around the city itself. The 5 typologies of active green architecture are the new public developments, industrial applications, refits to existing architecture, community spaces, and master planning. These separations were based off both the scale and the social applications, yet often these responses overlap with each other in integration and project scales. Active green architecture and new construction could be implemented in apartments, offices, schools, or any other individual building. The main goal of this level of design is to promote public health, availability of good food, and social connections within a community. A response like this could utilize simple community gardens for their low cost and low maintenance. If there is minimal space within these buildings, then maybe a simple wall of vertical farming could also be adopted. Inside office buildings, they are already inserting green walls. Why not introduce agriculture onto them and transform the greenery into an active part of the office? The architectural considerations for projects like this would be a larger floor weight loading or an increased courtyard spacing. The Vancouver Convention Centre adopted a similar active green response, integrating a rooftop garden that held multiple bee farms. Active green architecture can work outside the box to develop solutions. A section that would sit outside the public's eye would be active green architecture's response to industrial applications. This is targeted towards urban farmers who would use the integration of greenhouses or warehouses into the urban fabric. But as these sectors grow, we might see more of a response towards vertical towers or similar office buildings, but with closed off, filled with indoor urban vertical farms. These vertical stacks could allow for fill-in spaces within the urban fabric, catering for cities with higher population densities. The industrial warehouses are currently in development by startup companies such as AeroFarm, based out of New Jersey. They adapted an old steel mill into the largest indoor vertical farm, supplying direct to market and to restaurants. Another interesting look at the application of active green architecture was the photo documentary from Netherlands showcasing the greenhouse's grow lights at night. A good sustainable point about active green architecture is the ability to refit into existing structures. Due to large amounts of construction, changing building codes, and shifting economic factors, many old buildings in larger cities lay vacant. These provide cheap real estate, active interventions, and developments. The Aero Farm was a refit project itself. Sometimes, as people renovate their buildings, they like to include active green architecture in the process. This gives us one of the best examples of active green architecture today, the Pansona headquarters in Tokyo. The company wanted to renovate their main office building and in the process include up to 10% of the floor area as growing spaces. The CEO did this to promote their employees' health and eating habits. This was also to become a team building exercise, growing rice paddies and over 200 other species of fruits and vegetables. Employees are able to take this produce home to feed their families. For a different scale, active green architecture in community spaces focuses on the holes left in the urban fabric. Alongside these fill-in spaces, the repurposing of current green spaces and public forum is also possible. These scales would focus on installations or pavilions, providing temporary exhibitions for the public. Involvement at this level is different from the other projects, as often non-for-profit organizations and volunteer groups maintain and grow in such spaces. These fill-in projects will help permeate greenery through the city until newer buildings follow in the green revolution. The last typology for active green architecture is the master planning level. For active green architecture to truly make a difference in the United Nations goals of zero hunger, life on the land, and sustainable cities, it needs to adopt a larger level approach. Active green architecture master planning would address multiple levels, from city block up to a state or country level. This scale of intervention would be a government-sponsored push over time as a policy decision to both promote social health of the cities, but also a combination of food security and combating environmental problems. An example of this would be Singapore, where they have legalized the inclusion of green spaces into the urban fabric. As they continue to look forward to their long-term vision, active green architecture will replace their current green architecture policy. This was just a short outline for the research proposal for the Active Green Architecture Guidebook, a tool for design and social change within architecture. It looks to bring architecture into a holistic design idea of food, water, and shelter, the basics of human survival. At the same time, it also looks to reverse the city and urban sprawl into nature that we've become so accustomed to. Today, it is important to address the problems of food security as the world's arable lands decrease. This also works to improve people's societal interactions and physical health. This guidebook for the architectural industry will contain more case studies, design outlines for architectural responses, along with researchers for further ideas. Thank you for listening.